This is That One Audition with Alyshia Ochse.
All right, Alex. I saw that you born and raised LA, Glendale. So
Glendale.
in these streets of Los Angeles of sorts.
Yeah.
Was comedy always the thing? Walk me through how we start landing in some of the best comedies, the most unusual comedies. Alex, you really swing for the most unusual comedies and they land.
Thank you. I know I've been very fortunate that the two shows that I've been a series regular on have been these off the beaten path, oddball projects, and I've been so fortunate for that. But taking you back to the very beginning, I grew up on the mean streets of Glendale, California,
Yeah.
the Jewel City, the gem of the San Fernando Valley.
The
Um,
gem.
that's fun fact. That's why it's called the Jewel City, because it's the gem of the San Fernando Valley.
We learn something
Yeah,
new every
we learn something new
day.
every day. And so I grew up near the entertainment business, but I was raised, my parents, it was so suburban. It was such a suburban upbringing, and sports ran my life. That's all I cared about was sports, whatever the next, whether it was baseball or basketball or football. I did not give a shit about the entertainment business. I always enjoyed comedy movies, but it was for pure enjoyment. Sports was what my sole life's purpose was for the first, however many 18 years of my life. And I played so much so that I played football in college. And then I stopped playing because you get diagnosed with one concussion and then you go, oh, I've had several of these, so I should probably stop.
It's a good
So I
time. Good time.
did. And my dad my parents had divorced and my dad was taking improv classes and I thought he was having a midlife crisis. I was like, Dad's losing it. He's doing this weird thing and he would tell me about it and I just thought, I was like, okay, weirdo, keep playing make believe with other adults. It's kind of strange. Maybe you should spend that
Good luck
money
with
on
that.
therapy instead. And then he goes, oh, it's actually really great. And while you're home this summer, I'm signing you up for an improv class. You have to do it and you have to get a job. Those are my two requirements for you being here this summer. And I was
And
so
how old were
pissed.
you at this time, Alex?
I was 18. I was
Okay.
18 years old and in a class full of grown-ass adults and people that were working. I remember there was like a guy in my very first class who I'd recognized from some commercial and I was like, "Oh my God, he's real. He's
He's a
a
real person.
real person,
He's a
professional
real
actor
actor that's doing it. Yeah.
that's doing this thing." And I went there begrudgingly, but I instantly fell in love. This was at the IO West, for those that remember that.
Uh-huh.
And I didn't know how prominent a role it would figure in my life at that stage, but I knew that it was something almost instantly that I never wanted to stop doing. And so for the next 12 years, I was working regular jobs in sales. I drove for Uber for a little bit. I sold gym memberships and I sold furniture. I was a recruiter at one point, but I was always in an improv class. I never went more than a few weeks without signing up for the next class, wherever it was, whatever it was. And my sole focus from basically 18 years old to 30, after identifying this thing called improv that I knew I loved, was just to get good at improv. That was it. There was a period in my
Were
life.
you like, okay, I'm gonna go to Saturday Night Live? Was there a pipeline dream at this, or it just was like, okay, improv's it. Is it stand up that's gonna become the ultimate as you're just like, I'm just gonna play an improv as a hobby?
Yeah, it was like a hobby, and I just would
Okay.
go to shows at the IO, and I would go to shows at UCB, and it would just blow my mind, and it was just like I want to do that as good as they do it. That's it. I don't care about anything else. And in fact, in terms of what it was going to lead to, I thought for a period that I was going to move to Chicago and just do improv because that's where, that's the
Yeah.
birthplace of modern improvisational comedy, and I was going to get a job in Chicago doing whatever and be like a known improviser in Chicago. But there was no end goal other than I wanted to get good at this thing.
So
That was
when
it.
when do you transfer from iOS into Groundlings? Because just for people that aren't maybe so privy to the improv world, iOS and what's the other one that I'm blanking on right now? They don't necessarily do a cutthroat system like Groundlings does. Groundlings, like, so every level you're you're not allowed to go to the next level basically if you don't graduate.
Yeah.
Ultimately, to get to Sunday company, which you do. So at what point do you decide to take this up to the next level, or what brings you over to Groundlings?
Yeah, so I was taking classes, like I said, anywhere I could find an improv class. I was at the IO, and then I was taking classes at UCB, oftentimes at the same time, UCB out here in LA. And then I realized that I went to college in San Diego. As we know, we've firmly established I'm from Glendale. I had only lived in Southern California at this point in my life, and I had visited New York once in college on the family trip with my mom, and I knew I was like, oh, I want to live here at some point. So I moved to New York. That's where I was working in retail, and I was a recruiter. But I was in UCB New York, and then also the People's Improv Theater. Again, mostly always at the same time. And then I moved back out here to move back out here, was performing again at the IO, got back into class at UCB, and I knew about the Groundlings, but it was always this, as you mentioned, this scary cutthroat place where people get their heads proverbially chopped off. So I was intimidated by it, but I was in a class and I had been doing it long enough now, maybe 7 years into my improv journey where I was feeling like, okay, I think I'm relatively proficient at this. I had performed at the IO and I was in a level 4 class at UCB. I'll never forget it with Johnny Meeks was my teacher. Great
Johnny
teacher,
Meeks. Yeah.
really great teacher. And it was in class and UCB is all about the game, right? They don't do characters. The amount of times that I was told that was funny, but you rushed into a character game, or maybe don't do that character. I had gotten it at that point at level 4. I think still the level 401 at UCB is the final level before you can audition for their Herald teams. And we got there, and at that point, I had the characters beaten out of me. I was like, I'm not going to do any more characters. I get it. That's not what this school wants. Fine. It's not how I like to perform. I love to do characters, but great. I'll stop doing characters. And then we had an evaluation class, was like, Johnny was like, based on what I've seen and the notes that your permanent record that your previous teachers have left, we'll do some scenes based on that. And he goes, all of your notes here say funny but does characters. That was a bad thing. Like, funny, but he does characters. But then he goes, but at this point, we haven't seen you do any characters. So now I'm actually curious to see what we see you do a character. So I got up on stage and I did a scene with Patty Guggenheim, who was in class at the Groundlings at the time as well. She's in the main company with me now, but she was in class. We did a scene together where I played a character and it went great.
What character
And
do you play? What was your character?
if I remember correctly, I was getting my car fixed and it was the character that sounded like this. And oh, can you please help me with my car? There's goo all over my engine. So a silly character like
Yes.
that. And the scene went really well. It went over really well in the class. And Johnny was like, yeah, man, you're clearly good at this. So just do characters. That's clearly what you're proficient at. So just do characters. And I had been like for spending thousands of dollars on classes at this point, being told, like, don't do characters, don't do characters, don't do characters, to get to the very end at UCB, to have my teacher, who I really looked up to as an improviser and a teacher, just go, yeah, just do characters, just forget all that stuff. I was thrown by that. And Patty, as I mentioned, was in class at the Groundlings, and she said, come with me to a show. There's a student lottery show happening this afternoon. You should come with me. And Elliot Schwartz, who's also a Groundling, happened to be in that same UCB class. They were both students. They were like, you should come and check this out. So I went to the show at the Groundlings. It was all characters, so silly, so fun, everything that I love doing. And I enrolled in class at Groundlings later that week because I was like, oh, it was watching the show going, like, okay, I'm ready for this. Whether I'm ready or not, this is the style of comedy that I love and what I'm doing. So I signed up for the audition, because you have to audition to be in the core track, we call it, at the Groundlings. So I signed up for the audition that week.
And
And
now for the audition, I want to know which characters you did, and
oof,
or give me some. And where what I want to tap into, Alex, is your brain. Candy's
yeah,
Coke is a good friend of mine who was also your co-star on
yeah,
Go Fuck Himself. So I
love
asked her
candies.
earlier, I was like, you got some questions for Alex? And she was like, how the fuck does he come up with these characters? So actually, for your audition, tell us if you remember which characters you did for Groundlings before you got really into the school. I want to know your instinctual building on character development because then we know Groundlings, so many levels of it is really pushing you into character work with
Mhm.
their style of teaching. I want to know your own instincts of where you blossomed into this.
Yeah, I've been a people watcher and been very fascinated with people and their lives and what it must be like to live like that or in this town or drive that kind of car or what does it mean for someone to wear those clothes and what does that say about them? So I've always been very fascinated with characters. My my interest in doing characters and voices though dates back to when I was a small child, still very much into sports. My grandfather, John Raddick, who he was an actor at the Pasadena Playhouse in the 40s or something like that, 40s or 50s, maybe 40s, in the 40s. He went on to do other things and not be a professional actor, but he grew up as an actor and he would do characters constantly. I remember he would call me and basically prank call me as these different voices. And I would do them. Then when I realized it was him, I would do these voices back. I remember when he would visit, I remember one time very distinctly, we were at a swap meet and he was in character the whole time, playing this character who would, oh, and look at this. This would look fantastic in Mother's Foyer, was something I remember. And he would draw these little mini audiences, and people really believed that he was this guy. And then he would give me like a little wink. And I'm named after him. I was born on the same day as him. I have a tattoo on my arm of some of his artwork. I've just really always revered him. And so him doing those characters, it was like, oh, doing silly characters and voices and little like bits and transforming, that's cool. That's a really cool thing to me. So that's where I feel like it was woven into my DNA. In the Groundlings audition, I want to just put this out there for anyone who's thinking about it. It's not an audition in the traditional sense where you walk in, it's just you and one or two, someone running a session or someone, a producer or a director. It's you and a bunch of other people and a teacher taking a class. That's all it is. So anyone out there who's feeling stressed or intimidated, like
Stressed about doing
you
it.
shut
Yes.
about doing the audition, I would say get a little bit of a baseline. I went to Groundlings to learn Groundlings style improv. I didn't go to Groundlings to learn what improv was. So I tell my students, because I teach there now, give yourself a little bit of a baseline and come here to learn what we do, how we do improv. But it's just a class at the end of the day. So take that pressure off of yourself and come take a class, basically. So in mine in particular, I didn't go in going, I'm going to do these big, crazy characters. I went in, my goal was show that I'm proficient, show that I can take direction, and show that I'm like a good student, basically, because that's what we're looking for in those auditions is like, do you have a proficiency? Do you have an ability to try characters? But mostly, like, will you be a good student and someone who's eager to learn and someone who's eager to take chances? And it's very fundamental state, yes, and somebody. And in my audition, there was a scene that went up before me that got so adversarial that the woman in the scene stopped and was like, I think this motherfucker's calling me fat. Him, the person. And everyone was like, no, I think
No.
it was character. He was talking about your character. And she was like, no, I think he's talking about me. I think this is some bullshit or whatever. And it was like so real life friction,
Oh,
combative.
yes.
And it was so awkward and uncomfortable that our director, who I forget who it was at this point, got things back on track and kind of smoothed things over. But from that point forward, I was like, regardless of whatever I do, I'm just going to choose joy and get along with the person in my scene. We're going to be
Yeah.
friends. I'm going to love everything they do. So I remember we were flight attendants making an announcement, and I just told myself that I was going to be anything that my scene partner said, I was going to think was like the funniest thing that I'd ever heard, that I was going to be their biggest champion, play a low status character. But really, my goal at that point was to be like, can you, ladies and gentlemen, little did you know we have a stand-up comedian on our hands, the funniest flight attendant this side of the Mississippi. Just going to be positivity the
Boosting them
whole
up.
way. That's all. Choosing joy. I choose joy in my work. And so in that moment, it was choosing joy. Now, sorry, to answer the other part of your question, how I get into characters now doing improv. It's a series of yes ands. So yes and is the idea of agreement, acceptance, and building on that, adding to that idea. I just do it with myself. So, for example, people think like, how did you come up with that fully formed, realized character before the scene even started? And the truth is that I don't. I just discover it very quickly in the moment. And so I start with always in the dark. The Groundlings, the lights go out. We get a suggestion, the lights go out, the lights come back up. So when those lights go out, I instantly make a postural shift that informs some sort of facial shift. So if my shoulder goes down like this, that's going to tell my one of my eyes to kind of squint a little bit. And then
Yeah.
so that's my face yes-anding my body. And then
Uh-huh.
my mouth is going to kind of do the same thing. And then when I open my mouth, the voice is going to come out like this. So all I had to do was move my shoulder to move my face like this, and then just do what makes sense. Then my voice would kind of sound like this. And then when the specifics come out of the character, I just yes and who this guy feels like. So yeah, of course I drive a 1974 Pontiac Grand Am with the muffler still attached to it, baby. And I just do what makes sense, but it's a series of small yes anding myself. That's how I get into and come up with
So,
characters like on
so
the
you
spot.
start body first, then voice, then you kind of build on that.
And
That's
then I just yes and how that feels. And then you
I
add
find that fascinating and wonderful. But even just it's that instinct work of standing up and all of a sudden being like, I have a limp, right? It's just whatever thought comes to your brain first and you just
yeah,
go with it.
yeah, exactly.
I
And do the thing that makes sense. Like I tell my students, there's this misconception or this idea that you need to be like clever or witty or have all this cleverness to be surprising when really, if you think about it, you just have to make a physical choice and then do what makes sense from there. I don't have to get clever with, if I was this guy doing this character, I probably wouldn't be, it would make less sense for me that he would be a kindergarten teacher than it would for him being an auto mechanic. Just be an auto mechanic because that's what he feels like. And then we'll figure out what else he's got going on. It's a series of yes ands and do what the scene is required, do what makes sense for this character. Don't feel like you have to have some weird left field piece of information that isn't connected to this character. Because if you think about it, that's more work. You have to justify
way more
now why
work.
this guy
Uh-huh.
there's almost no justification needed why this guy works at an auto mechanic because we go, oh my God, of course that guy works at an auto mechanic
Of
versus,
course.
wait a second, why does he teach kindergarten? I have to work to justify one. I don't have to work to justify the other. And I'm all about
Yes.
simple improv, keeping things simple.
Okay, then along the track of simple improv and groundlings being cutthroat, and let's go
Hmm.
back. Okay, you get in. We know you get in because you're going to go all
Hmm.
the way through the ranks to now being a teacher. What are the cuts then that they're doing every year that kind of put you on, like you said, there's the three things to get into groundlings. What are the things to go from level to level that kind of keep you into the game? Or if it's a better question, what gets you cut? Yeah, it's probably better to know what gets you cut probably than
Yeah.
what puts you to the next place.
I think in the core track for improv, it's the first level is basic, and that's really like a scene, a fundamental level that shows a proficiency in understanding what a scene needs. Do you have an ability to add the key pieces of information? Who, what, where, why? Do you have an ability to yes and? Do you have an ability to problem solve within scenes if things go awry? So it's basically a foundational level. And if you show a proficiency in that, an ability to consistently label your scene partners, connect with your scene partners, make your scenes about the relationship and not about the premise or some extraneous thing that we can't deal with in the moment, then I think you'll pass that class. In intermediate, basically a character workshop. So it's doing a lot of character work and understanding point of view and how we can get laughs by behaving as a character, by moving as a character, by adding information that makes sense as these characters that we are doing? And can you show a wide enough range of doing that while also still maintaining those fundamental elements of scene work that you established in basic? In intermediate, there's the final exam is called Five Through the Door. And basically, you leave the classroom, you enter, the moment you enter, you are a character. You have a small transaction scene with another person who's there. You get the suggestion of a store, like you're at Best Buy. So you walk in as one character, You get out your point of view, you know what you're there to buy that supports the point of view. You have a small interaction, you buy a thing, you leave, you close the door, you come right back in as another character, there to buy something else for another
Mm.
reason, and you do that 5 times in a row. So that's the final exam there. And if you can do that on 3 out of the 5 characters and really hit with a very clear point of view, what's this character's deal? What's their outlook on life? And do their actions and their voice and the things they say support that point of view? Then you'll pass that class. If you don't do those things, then you'll probably have to take it again, or you won't pass at all. And then the third level is Improv Lab, which is basically, in a nutshell, you're asked to do both of those things at a very high level. So can you do character work and scene solve? And is your comedic point of view starting to emerge? There's a show with that class, so then there's a show component. So are you able to now put it all together in front of a live audience? And there's that. Then you're invited into the writing portion of the program. So where you get into monologues and sketches. And this is where it gets like actually cutthroat because it's at this point pass fail. Like it's either up or out. So this is where the pressure really starts to mount. So then you have writing lab, which is character monologues and scenes. And it's your ability to play believable characters and write realized scenes and monologues. But I would say like the main thing that we look for at that level is are you do you show a relative proficiency at writing, but moreover, was your character funny and believable and grounded? Was there behavior that we were laughing at and not just the words on the page for that level? Then you have advanced writing lab where it's, I think, 16 classes and 2 shows. And that's just like, what do you got? What sketches and what material do you have, and do we like it or do we not? Are you showing now that you have what it takes to potentially become a groundling? Then from there, you get into the Sunday company, and then
Mhm.
every 6 months in the Sunday company, you are voted on and reevaluated, and you're either cut, you're given an extension for another 6 months, or you're invited into the main company. And there's no better training
There
than the
isn't.
company.
And okay, so during all of this time, once you're getting to main company level, are you starting to think about this as a profession and now getting an agent? Now I want to know when it tracks from, okay, I've talked to a lot of people that have gone through all levels and they can't do any other job. Once you get to that like higher, like doing, like you said, what was it? So many, 2 shows and 16 classes. It's so time consuming that they're barely ever even able to audition, what I'm hearing from them.
Yeah. Yeah, so I was working a full-time job I sold furniture for a living.
I love all your jobs are also great characters.
I have a comedy feature that's in development right now where the lead character is a furniture salesman and had a dream as a youth of being a professional dancer. And so it's a story about following your dreams no matter what life tells you. Like life tells you to play it safe and get a good job, and you might not love it, but it'll pay the bills, or do you follow your dream? And so I'm convinced that the reason I sold furniture was to inform that character in that
100%.
script. But I was working a full-time job while I was in advanced writing lab. And then for my first 6 months in Sunday company, which was insane looking back on it, I when I started, I was working 9 to 5. I had a newborn baby, and I was having writing meetings that would sometimes go till midnight or later. I would be on the phone, like on a sales call, while highlighting my scripts or printing scripts or trying to memorize scripts for the show that was coming up on Sunday. And the short answer is I don't know how I did it. I just knew that at that point, I really wanted it. I really wanted to be successful at this sketch comedy thing. It was when I got into Sunday Company that things started to feel real from a industry standpoint. I had agents and managers that would come to the Sunday Company shows that wanted to work with me. I ultimately signed with a manager, and then I started getting auditions coming in, and I was like,
And
I'm a
do you,
furniture salesman.
yeah, and do you know how to audition? I want to hear your first couple auditions because it's one thing to be in a class and to yes, and to learn all the rules of improv, but now here's a script. Or
Mhm.
are you most of your first interviews or auditions, are they mostly for that track, like improv lane?
I had a few other non-union commercial jobs. I had a lapse in my 9 to 5-ness where I was driving for Uber, and I was like, I'm gonna get a commercial agent. I think I could do commercials. I'm not ready to act, but I think I've been doing this improv thing. I have a friend who has an agent that'll meet with me, so I'll try this commercial thing. And I remember some of those being the most terrifying, mortifying experiences of my life. I can literally, there was one audition where my hands were shaking like this. I was so overcome with nerves because it was so new to me. But
Mhm.
looking, and I felt stupid there going, there's no way. But those auditions where I was so nervous at with almost no stakes, like a non-union commercial audition in my I couldn't have even told you what any of the products were for. They were so obscure. But getting those nerves out and getting those reps in the audition setting were
Mhm.
vital to me now being able to fully go into an audition and make a big choice and have almost no nerves whatsoever because now I just go in there and have fun. But I got those nerves out in the early audition. I remember talk about that one audition. I remember one of those early non-union commercial auditions was at Fifth Street in Santa Monica. I know you know the one
Of course.
at 4 o'clock on a Friday.
100%. Yep.
They always are. I had a call back yesterday that was at 3 p.m. in Santa Monica. I was like, okay, here we go. This one was for a flooring company, like a mom and pop flooring company, where we put socks on our hands. Our faces weren't even in frame, and we had to be these characters, but sock puppets. So our faces, we weren't even on the camera. It was all just a sock puppet thing. And I
And
remember
were you
at that
nervous from
time,
that? Was your
I was
hand?
so nervous. I was so nervous. My hand was probably shaking, and the sock was so gross because they would just give the
Ew.
same. Yeah, it was like everyone's
Ew.
sweaty, nervous palms in the same
Yes.
socks. I didn't book it.
You
I
didn't
didn't
get
book
that
it. I
one.
know
That one
that.
didn't come through.
That
Okay,
was the
so
one.
when you start working, does your manager bring you to innovative? Are you working with innovative before you're even SAG eligible? Because you're talking about non-unions. So when do you, what gets you into union status? Or because
Hmm.
2019 you do Superstore, so
Yeah,
you probably
yeah,
shot that early on. So we're talking around 2018,
yeah.
19
This
is
was
when you
like
got into the main company the same time.
No, I got into main company in 2020, either at the end of 2020 or early 2021. I think early 2021. So I was in Sunday company when I booked Superstore in 2019. And that's when the non-union commercial stuff, that was probably like 2016, 2017. And then I went, okay, hold on. My focus is in the wrong place. I need to get back into class and focus on the work. I just need to get back to the work. And so my agency, I basically was like, hey, I'm not gonna, my commercial agent, I should say. I was like, hey, I really appreciate you guys. I'm not ready for this. You don't have to keep me on your roster. I'm okay. I'm just gonna get back into class and I don't know. I don't know if this is for me. Fast forward, then I'm at the Groundlings, finish the Groundlings, get into Sunday Company. Then I have a manager, still not a theatrical agent or a new commercial agent at this point, but we had an at the Groundlings and Sunday Company, we have these industry nights where they'll
Mhm.
invite casting directors and managers and agents, whatever. So the casting department for NBC Universal was there. Maybe coincidence, maybe not, that the following week, oh, this is actually an interesting story. Prior to that, SNL did a showcase for us at the Groundlings before this industry night. SNL came and we did a character showcase at the Groundlings, and I was like, holy shit, hello 30 Rock Center. I am on my way. I am going to be on
Yes.
SNL. This is fate. As fate would have it, they didn't invite me out to test. One of my best friends did, and I didn't, and I was crushed for like 2 days. The following week, we have this industry night where I'm still down about the SNL thing because at that stage, you get in Sunday Company, it starts to feel like, oh, maybe this isn't a crazy thing that can
Mhm.
happen. So I'm down for a couple days after I don't get the SNL news. But the following week is this industry night where, had I been flown to New York, I wouldn't have been at this industry night.
You would have missed, yeah.
Where NBC, I would have missed it. So I was there and I had a really good show. NBC Universal casting was there. Like B. Ali Thomas was
Mhm.
there. Allison Jones was there. Like all these big casting directors who I didn't know who
At
they
the
were
time.
or
Yep.
anything at the time. They would come up to me and I would be like, "Oh, thanks for coming." And my manager, who was also there, was like, "That was Allison Jones." And I was like, "Who's Allison Jones?" Little did I know. It's so
Yeah.
crazy. So crazy. But then after NBC Universal people casting seeing me, I got an audition the very following week for a guest star on Superstore and got pinned. I was like, "What is a pin?"
And
Uh,
even in that audition, did you
yeah.
stay on script? Was it an
Mhm.
improv audition? What did you, because especially with somebody who's coming from nerves and now it's a different game a little bit. Do
I
you
was still
remember
pretty
any?
nervous. I
Yeah.
do. I was still pretty nervous for this audition, but I remember that the breakdown said something about he's an aloof stoner character. And my hair was long at the time, as Dougie Jr.'s was, even a little longer than Dougie Jr.'s was on Company Retreat. But I remember I was just going to play kind of my version of Airhead and a big, kind of confused guy. So he was kind of, oh, oh, dang. Oh, I thought you said we couldn't have costumes. Like a grown man child is, and it was that kind of character. And I remember it was Greenstein Daniel,
Yes.
and I remember they laughed, and I remember being like, "Oh, cool. That's a good
Especially if you get
sign."
them to laugh. Yes.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I did not know this, but I was
Yeah.
like, I think that went pretty well. I left going again, I don't know, but I had fun and I was playing a character. And I got pinned. Again, I was like, what does a pin mean? And then I was at the Groundlings preparing for pitch, which is where we workshop new material. And then I got the call that I had booked this show. And that's when but I was like, how does that work? I'm not even SAG or whatever. They Taft-Hartley'd me into the union. So I
Mhm.
was in SAG and it was all from
It was all
just
from
focusing on the work.
all
That's what
comes
was
back to
so
the work. I always feel like
always.
a lot of people write in and they're asking about how can I get an agent or manager? How can I do this? And I'm like, if you do something, it's law of attraction works better if you can put something out. People know how to sell you. So even
Mhm.
your manager that came, now they know what you're doing. Casting then like it doesn't get any better than being known for your work, therefore pushed for your work, like pushed in a direction to go. You can't, nobody knows how to sell you if you're brand new and there's nothing that you've done. And I know it's a catch 22 where it's like, I need to go make something now so that people can see me. Yes,
Mhm.
essentially. That's exactly
Essentially,
what needs to
I
happen.
mean, I use this analogy all the time for my students. You wouldn't pick up a guitar for the first time and say, "All right, I want to play Hollywood Bowl."
Yeah,
No, you'd
yeah.
want to get really good at playing the guitar, and then Hollywood Bowl happens eventually after years of practice. And I'm not under any false pretenses that our profession requires some degree of luck, but I also agree that luck is when skill meets opportunity. You know,
All the
if you
time.
don't have the skill and the opportunity comes along, then what's the point?
Completely. It just doesn't work that way. I think it just always that mileage, it just gives you so much wherever somebody comes to meet you. When you've been running for a while, they can meet you at different markers and
Hmm.
help you go in a different path. All
Yeah.
right, so then I want to hear. So, just for people that are listening, Superstore's 2019, when it comes
Hmm.
out, you probably shot it at the beginning of the year.
Yeah,
They
probably. Yeah.
actually, was it a recur off the get-go, or did they fucking love you so much, Alex? They're like, and we're gonna write for you some more.
Yeah, it was just a guest star is what it was billed as, and then I got news that it was up to a recur. So I was like, again, what does that mean? I did not know any of this stuff. I was like, what does that mean? You're going to be back for another episode. And I was like, oh my God, incredible. My second episode, I was given a vest. My character had a name. And I was like, oh, I'm in this show now. I'm in this world. They're introducing this character. And then I was pinned and then released 6 times after that.
For the whole season where they
For
kept.
the Yes, because, and I now know why, or I knew pretty early on as to why this was happening. I shot their fourth season and I was pinned for 6 episodes between the fourth and then the fifth season, but they had announced that the fifth season was going to be the final season. So rather than introduce a new character into the world, they had to tie up storylines and loose ends and use that bandwidth. So it was like a bit of a bummer, but because it was supposed to be a much larger role in the show. But I was just so grateful that I was SAG now. I was in the
Yes.
union and it meant the fact that they kept pinning me, I was like, okay, that's the win. I can't control the other stuff that it's the
Mhm.
final season and they do, but the fact that the creatives and the writers, keep trying to write for me and want me back, that's a W. That is a W.
That's always the W, I think, time and time again. Now I want to jump to Kevin can fuck himself because it's such an unusual show. So many people didn't know what to do with this tonally. We're in self-taping realm now, so you're not going in the room.
This was one of the last, I know,
You got to go in the room. Okay, I want to hear this
in
whole
the
audition.
room.
I want to hear the whole
Yeah.
audition.
So I get the breakdown for this character named Neil, and for whatever reason, I had convinced myself, I don't know if this is right for me, even though it was pretty spot on. Bigger guy, best friend, he loves football, eats hot dogs, drinks beer, like a guy's guy. I'm like, I don't know why I was like, yeah, that's minus the beer, all the things that I love. But weirdly convincing myself that I wasn't right for it had kind of freed me up to just I was going to play a big character, similar to the guy that I did in Superstore, but this guy was from Boston. And I knew that it was for multicam. So I knew that I was going to swing big and do hard funny because I knew what the show was at this point. But my goal was like, no, take a real big swing and see. This is before which I'll get into my philosophy on auditioning now. This is when I was still trying to figure it out. But I had read an article by Edie Patterson, or an interview with Edie Patterson, who's also is now a Groundlings alum. And the whole article was about how when in her career she decided to say fuck it. And basically that meant like when she decided to stop caring about what the outcomes were of her audition and when she went in and just did her. And I'm really fortunate that I read that right before this Kevin Can Fuck Himself audition. So I go in for the first call. It was two scenes. And I remember after the first one, Felicia Fasano, who I love dearly, was the casting director. She was like, and my manager at the time had told me she's really tough. So
She
don't be
is.
thrown if she gives you a harsh note or she seems unimpressed. That's just her style. Roll with it. So I do the first scene and she's like this. And I was like, oh no, I made Felicia Fasano mad. And then she goes, that was incredible. If it were just up to me, I would cast you right now. Which I was like, is she fucking with me? Like, is this
No,
part of
because when
her?
she
Yeah.
likes you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also such a funny learning moment for me, not knowing exactly the role of what a casting director is. I was like, you're the casting. It is up to you. You're casting.
Yeah. You're like, so I'll
Not
sign now.
knowing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So not knowing
Yeah.
all of the other cooks in the kitchen and the decision makers. So anyway, that was the first call. And I leave going, I think she was being sincere. I think she was being earnest that she would cast me now. So I text my manager and I was like, hey, I think that went pretty well. By the time I got back to my car, my manager responded and was like, yeah, I think it did because they want you to come back in like 3 days or something like that. Almost before I got back to my car, I had a call back, which wasn't even, Neil was one of the last characters they cast. It wasn't even a callback, it was a producer session, which I didn't know what it was. My manager had to brief me on all what that
All
was.
of
Again, this
this.
was all very
Yeah.
new to me. And in this scene, we did for the producer session or the test, it was a test, not even a producer session, it was a network test. I go in, and the scene we did is the very first scene of the show, which ends with we're playing beer pong, and it ends with Kevin saying, he makes a beer pong shot, and if I lose the game of beer pong, I have to take a naked lap around the house. It just ended on the script with him going, ha, yes, naked lap time, Neil. So no real button, no real blow to the scene. And I was like, I think it would be really funny if I started undressing to go take my naked lap. It's a big swing, but I was in this big swing mode where I'm like, I just want to go. I
Yeah.
want to show myself. So I had put on a pair of boxers over my briefs. So it was
Mhm.
prop boxers, very modest and safe. But at the end of the scene, I undid my belt, I pulled down my pants to reveal my boxers, and I walked out of the room. And I was like, they're either gonna love this or they're gonna call security for exposing myself. But that's a risk that I want to take because I think it's really funny to show that I do physical comedy. Here's how I can add value. Here's what I think
Yes.
is funny about this scene. And fortunately, the team loved it and cast me as Neil on this show. And it was because I
This.
took a big swing.
Did you literally shimmy your way, like
Yeah,
shuffle
I like
out?
shuffled out the door all the
Oh
way
my.
out, and they were laughing the whole time. And
Did they bring you back in at that point after you shuffled out, or did they
yeah,
let
yeah,
you
they were
shuffle out
like,
to
yes,
your car that way?
yeah. No, but they brought me back in the room, and they were like, "Oh my God, that was wonderful," and et cetera, et cetera. And then that was on a Wednesday, and then I got the call from Felicia on Friday that I was going to Boston.
You're going to Boston, man. And honestly, I know because it was a multicam and also a single cam. It was these two worlds, but you lived mostly in the multicam side of the story, right?
For season
Yes.
one. And I was hired for that. I knew going in, it was like, yeah, you're just going to be in the multicam. It's just Kevin and his buddy, and they are representative of this multicam, misogynistic world. Great. I love it. That's what I know how to do. I feel comfortable there. Come to find out that my character, Neil, this is a spoiler alert for those who haven't seen, has an altercation with Allison at the end of the first season. Neil was supposed to die at the end of the season, but they liked Neil, they liked me. And so rather than have hit me killed off, they completely reworked the second season so that not only was I alive, but I was now thrust into the single cam drama of it all, or dramedy, the single cam, the grittier reality where I would have to do real acting, which again, mind you, I'm an improv sketch comedian. I haven't done a
Yes.
serious role in my life. But the
So, how
fact,
did you
yeah,
handle this, Alex? Like, did you
yeah.
work with a coach or did you just start taking your skill set that can be very much transferable
Mm.
into this single cam dramedy kind of lens? Well, yeah, what was your tactic for, because you're such a, this as a compliment, a workhorse, a workaholic, essentially, where you're like,
Hmm.
I'm going to do it and I'm going to do it well. So
Yeah.
what were your stepping stones to address this new role essentially in the second season?
Yeah, because of my work at the Groundlings at this point and what the work ethic, and I had really honed in on my approach to the work and my preparation and how I prepared. And because the Groundlings, like, yes, we play these like big, silly characters that wear wigs and makeup and silly costumes. We teach emotion and emotional connection and playing earnest, honest, real emotions for things that are silly or as silly characters.
Mhm.
But we have to be believable. We have to be grounded. And we have to play the real, honest, emotional reality of a scene. Now, in a comedy scene, again, you're getting really upset about something trivial or small. That's funny. I trusted that I was going to be able to play the emotional reality of a scene and maintain my same preparation and how I approached the work and how I analyzed the script and how I got off book and how I would run lines and prepare in that way. But I also trusted that my ability to play the honest emotional reality of a comedy scene would translate to a drama. And it did. It really did. It didn't, there was no difference. You're having a big reaction to something serious as opposed to something, and a big reaction's not the appropriate term, but
Yes.
you're
Yes.
having an honest emotional reaction to something serious as opposed to something silly. That's
Mhm.
really
It's just
all
the
that's changing.
circumstances that are really changing at the most. Your relationship is still key, which you foundationally had been trained about relationship first
Yeah.
to create.
Listening and responding and doing what the
Yes.
scene requires, playing the emotional reality of the moment. Those are things that are so ingrained in my work. So I also, it really meant so much that Valerie Armstrong and Craig DiGregorio, a creator and showrunner, put that trust in me. And they were like, oh, we know you can do this. We know what your
Yeah.
background is, and we don't care. And we know that you can do this. And we know that you're going to be up to the task. And it was a truly like,
I
life-changing experience getting to do both of those things.
is
Oh,
this when innovative comes to play at this point?
no.
When does okay, from
Innovative just happened.
just happen
Innovative.
post jury duty?
Yeah, but I did meet with Innovative in 2019 when Superstore came out. I met with them and I wasn't quite, it wasn't at that time. I was still
Yeah.
a little bit too new for what they were doing, but I had then identified Innovative as, oh, this is a place where I could see myself really thriving and a really
Mhm.
good partnership. So Innovative was the first person to call my manager once the company retreat But once the trailer dropped, they were the very first call. Almost within like minutes of that trailer dropping, my manager got a call from Innovative, and I wanted to. It was like the timing was right.
The time
Finally,
was right.
yeah,
Yes.
for both of us. I wouldn't have been ready back
Hmm.
then to do the type of work and the types of things that they're sending me out for now.
Yeah.
But I
And I always
feel,
call it
yeah.
the staircase ladder. You can't really jump landings. And I love hearing your journey because it literally is another level, another level. You can really see the ladder climbing going because it does.
Mhm.
I say it takes 10 years to make a really good actor to get yourself, even knowing what type of actor you even are.
Yeah,
Right.
yes.
The TV and film landscape, it's constantly changing, but traditional actor training has largely remained the same.
It's focused on a theater model whose main goal is to help you stretch the expression of your instrument. That's why you can have years of training,
From scene study classes to audition classes.
to even an MFA, and still not be able to book a 2-line co-star.
That's why we created the Bridge for Actors.
A collection of tech, craft, and business online courses to teach you the skills that you need to go from a student of acting
To a working actor.
I feel like jury duty, company retreat, it takes us back to your OG. Because the audition for this full improv, obviously for what the show is, I want to know a little bit of the audition.
Yeah, of
What
course.
were they actually giving you or not giving you, or is it just your standard improv audition?
So the first call was a tape because we're post pandemic, mostly self-tape world. The first one, I did a tape that was a different character than Dougie Jr. It was for a different character that didn't even end up being utilized in the show. But and I can't even honestly tell you what I did for that tape, to be honest. But that tape got me on their radar, on Susie Ferris's radar, and my manager was like, "What if we?" I didn't have an agent at this time. This was all through my manager. Shout out Bridget Keene, she's the best. Um,
Yeah.
to do a tape for Dougie where he was the boss's son, and I knew a few things. I knew that he was the boss's son who was set to inherit the company, and I knew that he was playing in a band in Jamaica for the last 4 years. Those were the only two things that I was given.
Yep.
And I, again, at this point, based on the Superstore and the Kevin Can Fuck Himself, and I had booked a few, I was on No Good Deed.
Yep.
I booked a lot of commercials. I had unlocked something commercially, which I love commercials. I used to hate them, and now I love them. I think there's anyone out there who's like doesn't like commercials. It's what we do, man. It's talk about like getting you through some of the quieter theatrical times. Like commercials will
Yes.
be there for you. But anyway, I had developed. I have a lot of mantras, but one of my mantras was, and I've talked a lot about big swings. Baseball players, it is actually impossible to hit a home run when you're trying to bunt the ball. It's impossible. And bunting is that's safe. That's like I'm going to put it in play. I'm going to dribble the ball down third base line and hope that I can, fingers crossed, I can get to first base. I knew that how you book things is by hitting home runs. Like no one books anything by having a lukewarm bunt. They book things by taking big swings and connecting and hitting a home run. Now, when you swing for home runs, yeah, you swing and you miss like a greater amount than you connect. But boy, when you connect, is it like it's the right fit? You know what I mean? Like
Yes.
you swung big and you connected. And so at this point, I knew that I was going to take a big swing for this company retreat audition. So I fully costumed it like I often do, but like in a more ridiculous groundling style way. I had puka shells. I had my sunglasses that Dougie Jr. ends up wearing on the show, the suit that one of the suits that I end up wearing on the show, this like big ill-fitting suit. My hair was big, so I had teased it out. It wasn't blonde yet. And I knew that I was going to be this guy that had big ideas and didn't know how to execute them and was going to really do this like, Will Ferrell false bravado thing where I was just going to carry myself like I was the shit and I knew what I was talking about and the audience was going to be able to laugh at me because it was so clear that I didn't know what I was talking about. So in the self-tape, it was the parameter was he's talking to employees about his big ideas for the restaurant. And at the time, it was a restaurant, not a hot sauce company. So my ideas for the restaurant, the one big idea that I was going to push in the minute and a half that we had to do it, again, no dialogue, scripted. It was like whatever, take it and run with it. So I My whole big idea that I was going to push was that I loved ska music and hibachi grills. So we were going to turn our restaurant into the world's first hibachi grill. And then I went off on how I added like, bo, bro, bro. I added all those things in that
Uh-huh.
audition because I was like, I knew he was in Jamaica. So there would be some
Jamaica, 4 years. Yeah.
influence there. Exactly.
Uh-huh.
So that was the tape. And then I got the call back the next week where it was going to be an in-person job interview that was going to last approximately 1 hour. Some other people did focus groups where there was like other people. For the role of Dougie, they just were seeing one actor at a time. But we were told that as soon as we showed up at the office, it was in an actual office on Ventura in Studio City, that we were being filmed. So to show up in character and from the moment that we arrived. And we had a call, we all had calls with Jake Zemansky, who was our director, before everyone that was auditioning, just to have a little touch base on what they were looking for and the character and wanting to make sure that it was grounded and believable. And I knew I was playing a pretty big character, but I also was like, I'm going to bet on myself that this guy, I can still make this dude, my version of Dougie Jr., be grounded and believable and still go for hard funny. That was my goal. I
Mhm.
was like, I'm just gonna make these motherfuckers laugh and they'll remember that. That was my whole outlook. The most valuable thing that I did before this audition was I am early always everywhere, especially to audition. So I was like an hour early. I had time to kill. I went to a Vons down the street from this office and spent about 20 minutes, 20 or 30 minutes walking around this Vons as Dougie, interacting with people, asking if they knew where the bathroom was or if they liked this flavor of Gatorade or whatever. I was just asking just as many interactions as I could find. And it so instilled in me the confidence where I was like, oh, fuck, no one is going, hey, you're an actor doing a bit. They all
Yeah.
believe me. They all earnestly believe that I am a real person who dresses like this and talks like this and looks like this. Holy shit. Go do your fucking thing in this audition. Do this in your audition. So I walk in, or they mic you up first. I'm in character the whole time. They mic'd me up, and we were told that there was people working in the office, and but they knew what was happening. We could interact with them if we wanted to, or we could just sit down and conduct the job interview. That we were there to have this like, pseudo job interview with people on the board of directors. And at this time, it was a coffee company. Again, they didn't tell us it was a hot sauce company. And I knew, I was like, there's people in there. I'm going to interact with everybody. I'm not going to sit down and wait for them to come to me. I'm going to attack this thing and swing big. So from the moment that I walked in, I almost was like person to person, went down and did a little, had an interaction. But my goal was I want to show that Dougie really cares about these employees, that he's got a really big heart and and that he has big ideas and doesn't know how to execute them. But I knew the heart was going to be really important to me, and so I found this bit again. Oh, and I also, sorry, I also didn't want to go in too rigid because I wanted to improvise. I was like, all right, I'm going to trust
Yeah.
my training here, and I want to improvise my way through this. So I gave myself three tentpole ideas that I knew I was going to get out, that I knew I was going to say, and the rest, I just wanted to be present and react as this guy and find things. So I found this fun little game where every time someone would tell me their name, I very earnestly was like, oh, man, that's a beautiful name. I love that. We're happy. I just want to let you know, hey, at our company, you matter. You're important. And then I would sneak off and write their name on the board with an arrow and a little note about them. Talia was there, and I wrote tall. And then this guy Cole, I remember his name was Cole, and he was there just working, and I kept calling him Cold. Was it cold? Oh, that's a tight. And he kept correcting me, Cole, and I was like, cold, yeah, like the common cold. Dang, dude, that's awesome. But and then I would go write his name on there, and then another guy, Max, grabbed some Advil, and I hugged him and I kissed him on the forehead as if he told me he just had a headache, but I was reacting as if he told me he had just informed me that he had cancer. So I was like got really emotional and I hugged him and I kissed him on the forehead and I rubbed his cheek and then the interview started. So that wasn't even.
And you're being filmed, right? Like you don't know where the camera is, but you know that there is something capturing all of this.
Though for this one, there was like three cameras position that we could see because we knew that it was being filmed.
Yes. Okay.
And so we knew it was being filmed and I could see where the cameras were. And I heard laughs coming from one of the rooms, and I was like, oh, that's good. That's a good sign. That
Yep,
like
they're
they can't
watching.
even
Yep.
because they're supposed to be quiet. I know they're watching. They're supposed to be quiet, and I'm making them audibly laugh back there.
Yes.
Let's go. And then after those interactions with just the employees that were working there, they had to send out the other. I wasn't going to sit on that couch. They were going to have to come and tell me, hey, the next part of the interview is happening. I was just going to extract as much
Yep.
funny as I could from every single interaction that I had. And then Chris Kula and Rachel Hine, who ended up being the redheaded minions from Trucus, they came out and conducted this job interview. And I did the same bit where I wrote their names on the board and I kept looking back at it, like presenting as if I really cared about them. But then I had to keep looking back because I couldn't remember what their names were. And
Did you get them to laugh in the actual interview?
yeah, I could tell that Rachel and Kula, they were really good. I was like, man, these people are good. But there were a couple things that I did where I could tell Rachel's lip was quivering. And I was like, oh, I got her. I got her. Where she was like, the big thing that I was pushing was we were gonna make the world's first plant-based coffee, and that really got her. That really got her because coffee is a plant, obviously. We know this. But I was really showing how stupid he is. But he's got this big idea. He'd heard the buzzword plant-based and was
Yeah.
like, yep, we're doing plant-based coffee. And so I could tell that they were like, she was starting to break. And I was terrified of breaking myself. But again, that was a risk where I was like, you know what? If you're doing hard funny and you're making these people break and they're laughing back there, take that risk. Don't play it safe and go, I don't want to lose the job because I'm breaking. It's no, I was going to lose the job because I wasn't going hard enough. I wasn't taking a big enough swing. I wasn't trying to be as funny or extract as much funny from this situation as I possibly could.
What a journey of auditions that have never been really linearly anywhere near the same. What a gift that's playing on all of your foundational training, like you taking it so seriously. You said earlier your perspective on auditioning has changed. What is it? Can you put it into words?
Yeah, I think certainly I'll start with commercials because I used to have a terrible outlook on commercial auditions. I used to get them and I would be annoyed that I got them. And it was like, because those are mostly still in person. So I'm like, oh, I have to drive in and do this thing and it's a commercial and I carried that energy into the audition room and shocker, I never booked a single thing. Crazy, right? My perspective really shifted when the strike of 2023 happened and that's all we could do, right? So then that unintentionally forced my perspective shift because that's all we could do. So then I would get those same auditions and go, fuck yeah, an opportunity. Yes, yes, okay, amazing, let's go, let's go. And it was through that excitement that I found play in those commercial auditions again. And I really stopped giving a shit about the outcome and what they would think. And I was like, okay, no, this is an opportunity. This is for me. I'm doing this for me. I'm going to go in there and have fun and make the choices and do the things that I want to do. Still wanting to do the assignment and obviously, be a good auditioner and, say the lines. I'm not saying I went totally rogue, but what I'm saying is I went in with a mindset that now allowed me to free myself up to make these fun, silly choices and find the joy back. And so the mantra that I developed, which isn't too dissimilar from Edie Patterson saying, fuck it, is care, but don't give a shit. Care about this opportunity that you have, care in your preparation, care that you're fortunate enough to be given these opportunities to audition. So care to do a good job, but ultimately don't give a shit about the outcome. Do not care about that because that outcome, that desire to book gets in the way of us having fun in the room. And being present and
Yeah, absolutely.
putting your stink on it and making it your own as opposed to trying to give them what they want. And that's also everything falls under this care but don't give a shit umbrella, which has become my mantra for commercials. But I'm sure you've had every single person on your podcast say this, but like you can't, it's such a losing proposition to try to do what they want or do what you think they want because the fact is they really don't know and they're really looking for that thing that they don't have, that they haven't seen. And the only way that you can do that is if you ultimately don't give a shit about what they think. Do what it is that you find funny about this role, and being cool with the reality that the more common response is that you're not going to book it. But if you go in there and you acquit yourself with your comedic take and your sensibilities, whether it was if it was a miss on this one, or the role wasn't quite right for honestly a factor probably outside of anyone in that room's control, they're going to remember that swing you took, and they're going to bring you in for the next thing and the next
Yeah.
thing and the next
Because
thing.
then they're like, God, I wonder what Alex would do with this. That's what I like being is the answer to casting's problem, where they're like, oh, I wonder what she's going to do with this. I love
Yeah.
that. When
Oh,
you,
yeah.
that's our jobs. That's our job, where they're like, I want to see Alicia's take on this. Oh, I want to see Alex's take on this. Because I think once you start to realize it is selection, it's full on selection, not rejection. If you really come into the bat with something to play, it might not fit that puzzle piece currently, or the puzzle, but it might be, it's going to work for another puzzle. It's just
Yeah.
the clarity of that. Okay.
And then also, wait, I have one other thing to say about
Yeah.
audition that really changed the game for me, for anyone out there listening. If you're not tracking your auditions on a spreadsheet, you need to start doing that immediately. And here's what I do and what I started doing. Not only does it help see the volume of auditions you're getting, which casting directors are bringing you back in for things, which directors maybe have seen you in a callback session or producer session, the types of roles you're getting. The main thing for me, and again, talk about a perspective shift, I used to let getting pinned or getting the avail and getting released destroy me. I'd be like, oh, what a loss. Damn it. I was so close. Shit. That's a loss. I didn't get that. I didn't get that. It's a loss. I went back when I started doing this. I studied with Robert Diavanzo, and this is when I started, who I love, and he's an amazing teacher. And it was him that, after taking his class, I started logging all of this. I would have columns for a callback, pin or avail, booking, and I would highlight all of those in green. If I got a callback, it was a yes, and it was highlighted in green. And then same thing for being pinned or the avail. And I started to look at all these things that I used to be perceived as losses and that I would really let lower my morale. And I started seeing all this green, and I was like, oh my God, look at
Yes.
all those wins. Those are all wins here. And so then it was really fun to track, where I would get a callback and then no pin, no avail. But then on one of the next auditions, I would get pinned or I'd get the avail, but I wouldn't book it. And then I can see this has happened like several times on my spreadsheets. Then after that, the very next audition, I would get callback, pin, avail. So it was like I started
You
looking at it
could
like, oh
see
shit,
the
that was a win.
ladder.
I could literally
Yes.
see the ladder being built.
I
And it was
agree.
so huge to shift my perspective.
And that to me is our resume. It's not so much what's on IMDb. To me, especially when you're working with your teammates too, let's say you change up your teammates. Now you have a whole spreadsheet of being like, here's my historical, like where all of my lineage is, where you can call on these people that love me. I call it sometimes even the 10-year booking, where it's like, hey, I've been going in for this office. I've been pinned 20 times in the last 10 years. They love me. We're just trying to find the right thing, right? That is your
Yeah.
business to know.
Yeah.
It's your reputation builder, right? And I love that. Silliest
100%.
question to bring us all full circle. Is your dad still doing improv?
My dad is not still doing improv, but he does come to many of my shows, and we still have a, what do they call it, Monday morning quarterback discussion on this scene or that
Yes.
scene or
He
what
calls
we could.
with his notes
Oh yeah, and
and
he has
playback.
notes, and we do the play-by-play. Yeah, so we still do that, and we did have a father-son show for a little bit in like 2013 or 2014 or 2015, somewhere in there. We did a father-son show for a little bit, so I don't know. I think it'd be tough to get him out of retirement, but never say never.
Alex, what a journey. I can't wait to see what you do next. And I'm glad that you're writing. That makes like the most, obviously, coming out of Groundlings and learning all the writing stuff. So I can't wait to see what else you're going to put out in the world for us to digest. Because
Thank you, Alyshia. Thank you.
funny isn't
I do have, if I can promote something,
Yes.
I'm doing a solo show at the Groundlings on August 18th called The Book of Me, and it is there's nothing funny about it. It is a heavy-hitting, hard drama about a SAG-eligible actor who needs people to know his life's story. And there will not be a dry eye in the house.
Can't
Bring
wait.
your tissues. No, it's a really fun parody of a solo show, which I love solo shows, but it's a very fun, silly, dramatic, very truthfully, I cried almost the entire time. Retelling of this character's
Oh my
very
gosh.
non-dramatic life. So
Okay,
anyway,
so August
18th.
18th
Yeah.
at the Groundlings.
Yep.
And then where can everybody follow along with you?
Pretty much just use Instagram at Alex Bonifer is my name. That's where I post
Love
all
it.
of my goings on. I don't do Facebook or Twitter or anything like that. So yeah, find me on the gram.
I'll find you on the gram. Thank you, Alex.